So our T7 or new transporter has arrived, so we thought this is a perfect opportunity to do a video that we've not seen anybody do yet, where we explain the differences and the things that we like and we don't like between a T6.1, T7 or new transporter and the new Transit Custom, which we've had for probably about 18 months now. So as much as these three vans are quite different in their spec, obviously that's our own T6.1 that's been heavily modified. That's our Transit Custom, which is a kind of a higher, more mid-range spec. And this is a fairly base model, so it's common knowledge here at Transporter HQ, we really like a commercial bumper vehicle. Set out to purchase our first one, and we've got another en route as the commercial vehicle bet one. This will be in a matter of a few days. This thing will be on air suspension and various other bits. We're going to base this information on the vehicles being a base model spec. So as much as we'll go through and talk about each one, the figures and the numbers we give you all will be based on the entry-level vehicle, whether it be what a T6.1 was when you could buy them, whether it was the new transporter, now what the price is, and what the new price of the new Transit Custom is. Right, so the very first thing I want to talk about is the wet belt. So just rewind this for a minute. Anytime we've posted any information on this, or anybody does a video on either of these two vehicles, there's just a mass of comments going, oh, I'd never buy that, it's got a Ford wet belt. We brought it up when we did the video, when we went to Hanover, we did the launch on this. So I just want to go into a bit more detail about the wet belt and the information we've found out since our first video and the information we found out since. So yes, these share an engine. These both have a Ford engine in that has a wet belt in. But what loads of people don't know, and nobody really talks about, is they have a wet belt. So that is a T6.1, T6.1 and T6s both have a wet belt in the sump of those. Everybody says, I'd never buy a vehicle with a wet belt. Well, guess what? There's a chance you already own one because that's already got a wet belt in. But going back to these two, so yes, historically, the original Transit Custom had problems with their wet belts. Now, when you see people comment on this, a lot of the time it's because Dave's cousin, sister's, dog's, auntie's, friend's, hamster's mum had a van and that had a wet belt and that the wet belt blew on that. I get it. I'm not saying that they didn't happen, but they did. But the people that have worked on these vehicles, you see them comment on the videos and they say, no, there is problems with the wet belt, but the main problem is the fact that the vehicles aren't maintained. People have a habit of not servicing when they should do, and not looking after them and not maintaining the way they should do. Not taking away from the fact that Ford knew that there was a problem with this wet belt. We basically attacked the guys at Ford at the Hanover show to try and understand it. The information that we're given is Ford trialled, as everybody's trying to do at the minute in this world of eco and carbon footprint and keeping ourselves green and all that. Ford were using an eco-friendly belt in these, and that's what was snapping apparently, or a large chunk of them were. Say these in the original Ford Transit Custom. Ford have since changed the design and gone back to good old-fashioned planet-ruining rubber for these, which they think would have made a big difference. But the other thing that they've changed dramatically is the service interval. Now I'll go into this a bit more details with the Ford and the Volkswagen, because the Volkswagen comes with a ridiculously good service plan with it. And the other thing that's really important on these is it tells you the quality of the oil. But again, we'll go into that in a bit more detail later on in the video to put people's minds at risk. People will still complain about it, they'll still slag it off in the comments, but I'm going to try and cover as much of that as I can in the video for the people that have just seen other people comment wet belt and then they've decided based on that information that they're not going to buy these vehicles. The next thing I want to talk about is price comparison. So I want to talk about the price comparison between a T6.1, new 7, Transport T7, Transporter and the Transit Custom to give you an idea of how they all go. So as I said before, I'm going to base all this information on a base model. So none of these are actually base models. This is as close to base models you're going to get, but we went for a DSG gearbox in this one. But assuming that all of these were base models, starting over on the T6.1. So base model T6.1. Now I'm going to base this off a T6.1 with a business pack. The business pack is how you would get air conditioning and reverse sensors, because that comes as standard on a new Transporter now. So base model, so we're talking 110 brake. They were all 5 speeds in the T6.1s, whereas these are all 6 speeds. So your base model T6.1 with a business pack with the 5-speed gearbox would retail at, or the list price for it was 31,795 plus VAT on the road. So now let's move on to the new T7 Transporter. I'm going to be forever getting this wrong. VW are telling me they're still calling it the new Transporter, but I think everybody's going to call it the T7, but we'll see. But let's say, for the sake of this video, I'm just going to call it a T7 because it just rolls off the tongue easier. So for the new T7, as I said before, these all come with a 6-speed gearbox, whereas they were a 5. There's no need for a business pack because they all come as standard with LED headlights, automatic or DSG gearbox and reverse sensors. So based on that, the base price for this model without the DSG gearbox is 32,663, so £32,633. So in comparison to the T6.1, the T7 is £838 plus VAT more. But you've got to bear in mind inflation, obviously, and the time that the transition's gone from the T6.1 to the T7. But included in that, you get what VW are calling their 5+ promise. We'll go into that in a bit more detail, but in short, servicing, warranty and roadside assistance all covered. So as we said before, so this is £838 £138 more than that vehicle is new. Now let's talk about the Transit Custom. So again, this is a higher spec Transit Custom, but we're going to refer to this as if it was the base model. So if we were talking candy white, commercial bumpers, same spec as this, still comes with aircon in the base model, doesn't come with reverse sensors with the base model as far as I'm aware. So the base price model for this one is £34,114 plus VAT on the road. So that price is £1,581 more than that vehicle, and you don't get the 5+ promise, so you don't get the service plan, which I'm going to go into more detail shortly. So in comparison, this is cheaper than this is, but this comes with a 5-year servicing and inflation. This is more expensive than them all by 1,500 quid more than that one, or over £1,500 more than that, and you get no additional servicing and only a 3-year warranty. So after we filmed that previous clip, there was something that was bothering me, so I needed to go away and do some research. So I spent a little bit of time speaking to VW and Ford to work out residual values. So I was trying to get an estimate of how these vehicles will fare value-wise in 3 years' time. And these figures are based on Ford's information and also on the future values they're giving people from a finance point of view. So I've got some numbers here I just wanted to go through with you. So as I said previously, the T7, so total price for the T7 with the VAT, so the base model one is £39,160 and the Transit Custom is £41,058. So we already know the Transit Custom is more. According to VW, 3 years time with 30,000 miles on it, they expect that vehicle to retain 49% of its value. So after speaking to Ford, based on their vehicle, £41,058 including the VAT, the residual value on that in 3 years' time with 30,000 miles, Ford expect to be 41%. In 3 years' time, your Volkswagen that's cost you just over £39,000 will be worth 19 and a bit. Your Transit Custom that's cost you just over £41,000 is going to be worth 16,800. So the Transit Custom will be worth £2,354 less than the Volkswagen, and it's already cost you £1,898 more to buy the Transit Custom. So in total, put all that maths together, the difference between the VW and the Transit Custom in 3 years' time with 30,000 miles on it, you'll be better off buying the Volkswagen to the sum of £4,253. So let's talk about this 5+ promise that you get with the new Transporter. So what does the 5+ promise mean? Well, what the 5+ promise is you get a 5-year warranty, 5 services, 5 years roadside assistance. So that's VW Assist, which is actually operated by the AA. You call VW Assist, they send an AA driver, and you also get 3 free MOTs with this vehicle. So for those people that are concerned that this wet belt thing is an issue, you shouldn't have to worry about this for 5 years. Well, it's covered under warranty anyway. Everything that says the reason why these vehicles suffer with a wet belt is because they're not maintained properly. Well, you're getting 5 services free with the purchase of the vehicle in this 5-year promise. You also get 5-year warranty or 124,000 miles. Going over to the Ford, same engine. This has a 3-year or 100,000 mile warranty. Yes, you can buy additional service packs. They're going to cost extra for you, but there's no servicing, there's no MOTs, there's no roadside assistance included in the Ford, same where there is in the VW. So with an overview of these 3s, if you're looking from a financial point of view, financially this seems the best to buy over these 2, and even that one now, because what extra you get with a vehicle. So the other thing that comes up, VW lovers, and don't forget I'm an absolute VW massive fan. I love the VW products. My very first car was a Beetle, and I've had so many VW since. They hate the collaboration with Ford, and I totally understand it. If you watch our previous Hanover video, we go into a bit more detail why VW decided to do it and how it was their only option. A lot of people disagreed with us on that, but that's my opinion on that, and I will stick to that. If you're interested in that, we'll put a link to that video below. But people are concerned with the quality control issue. Again, let's go back to the first stat that we put in that video. The Transit Custom and the Transporter, Ford will sell 3 times more Transit Customs than Volkswagen will sell with Transporter. So there's loads of people out there driving Transit Customs. You would have already seen loads of people driving these on the roads. Ford owners aren't driving around going, shit, I'm driving a Ford. I wish I was driving original Volkswagen. Volkswagen owners going, all right, yeah, this is a Ford collaboration, I'm not happy about it. But all these Ford drivers are really happy with the vehicles. They love their vehicles, but Volkswagen guys are so set in their ways. But part of the concern there is the quality control. They're concerned that they see Fords and they have panel gaps, or there's issues with the build quality. You will hear about the issues with the build quality more with the Ford. There's 3 times more of them on the road than there is of these. Yes, both of these vehicles are made in a factory in Turkey. They are made on 2 completely different production lines with 2 teams of staff, one employed by Ford, one employed by Volkswagen. I think we heard somewhere that it's actually a Grundig washing machine factory was what it was originally there for. The Volkswagen guys control their production line, and the Volkswagen guys have their own quality control process, and Ford have their own. So if Volkswagen tell us that their quality control levels and standards and the checks they do on this is the same as they did on the T6.1. So we should expect to see, and we have seen already in these two, possibly because that was a very, very early Transit Custom, but when you walk around these, the T7 doesn't have some of the panel gaps and some of the things that we noticed when the new Transit Custom arrived. Generally, you look round that, and if you didn't know it was built in the same production or same factory as a Ford, you would think it was built by Volkswagen in the way it's built and put together in the panel gaps and the lines. Moving on to these two vehicles, I just want to talk about some differences between the new Transporter and the Transit Custom. So a lot about them that are very similar. Their side-on profile is very similar, and a lot of the underneath is very similar, and the load space in the rear is very similar. But what can I tell you that we know is different between the two? So we know that the suspension is different. We believe IBAC worked on the spring sets for these. We work very closely with the IBAC UK guys, and they say they have no data to say they did anything on the Ford. They certainly feel different. We've obviously changed the suspension on this several times since we've had it in our prototype, different versions of springs and coilovers and stuff. It's helped us massively when we come to developing for this. From a stock point of view, this definitely feels better and softer to drive than the Transit Custom did when that first arrived. Again, we're going to compare these two as if they're base models, but this isn't. This is a higher spec one. So the T7 comes with full LED headlights as standard across all models. Even their very low model has a full, very lowest level model has a full LED headlight, whereas the base model of the Transit Custom has a halogen hybrid headlight. So the other thing around the front, there's an obvious very difference in the styling. So we've actually already added different gloss black grills to this and lower splitters and stuff. But if you were to compare, they are very different in the way they look. A lot of people said they prefer the look of the Ford. If I'm honest, I look at the Ford and I think they've done a better job with the styling, but I also look at it and think I don't particularly like that look. It's the same way that I feel like a lot of the new Peugeots and Citroens look really smart. Would I want one? No, I wouldn't. I can look at it and go, that's very good styling. It's just not my style of styling. I think that looks good. I think Ford have done a really good job of it. But I prefer the VW look of this. So this more smiley kind of welcoming look that they've done on the T7, I've been told by VW, and it makes sense. It's inspired by the original T5, which is still my favourite ever Transporter. The grille and the sections are more inspired by that, as opposed to Ford very much have followed the Ford characteristics with their van with a new Custom, and it kind of looks very similar in its styling to the original Transit Custom. So what do we know on the front? We know the bonnet's different, the lights are different, the grills are different, the wings are different on the front, certainly. Moving around the side, one thing that we'd noticed with the Transit Custom is they didn't have arch liners. Certainly the lower spec ones didn't have arch liners, whereas this one, the low spec, all of them, regardless of model, has arch liners front and rear. That again, that makes a difference to the sound and the noise. This certainly sounds quieter in the cab than this one did. It's just extra sound deadening, and just something that we were a bit disappointed with the Transit. I don't know if the previous Transit Customs didn't have arch liners, but I know the new one doesn't on certain specs, whereas the Transporter does on every single model. Okay, so moving around the back of the vehicles. So the barn doors and the tailgates are actually different. We've been very lucky in the fact that the sides are the same from a glass development point of view. So we already have side windows available for these because we've been able to model them off the Transit Custom. T7, the side profile is the same, other than it looks different at the front because the wings are different. Round the back, the barn doors are considerably different. The shape of the barn doors are different. There's a few other additional details. Like I said, parking sensors come as standard on the Transporter, whereas they don't on the T7. Another thing around the back here on the Transporter that I just think finished off so much nicer is this trim here. This like a neat plastic trim, and underneath here your reverse camera would be there if this vehicle had a reverse camera, and also it has all your number plate lights. Whereas if we go over to the Transit Custom, they kind of just don't look as nice. They kind of just bolted on, and I don't know, they're easy to get knocked. I've seen one of these already. Somebody posted a video of this that's got knocked off, whereas they've been a bit clumsy with getting stuff in and out the doors. The Volkswagen certainly just looks like it's trimmed and nice and neat and hidden away better than the Ford does. So while we're here at the Transit, the rear is actually quite different. The lights are completely different shape and size. So front and rear lights won't be able to be changed across the two platforms of vehicles. Ford have very much got their design. Volkswagen have got their design. So moving inside, let's go inside the new Transporter. So the rear space here is exactly the same as the Transit Custom. Having spoke to a few of the conversion companies, I was over at Jack Shack with them a few weeks ago because they're designing something for us. They really liked how these are much wider, so you can fit a wider bed in here. There's quite a lot more room in these. Certainly going to make it more appealing for people from a camper conversion point of view. Somebody I was talking to recently that does a lot of this said that they would ordinarily go for a long wheelbase, but the extra width that made them feel like the short wheelbase was enough for them. Prefer the shorter wheelbase, but they gained the room in the width of their conversion. So moving on to the bulkhead. It's a small thing, but this is a feature that Transit Customs have had, and now the new ones and the Ford do. So it's like an extra load area in the bulkhead. This comes as standard on all the Fords, so even the base models have this. So you can, if you carrying extra planks or extra lengths of wood, that goes in under the passenger seat. Transit Custom has it actually, but the base models don't. It's an additional extra that comes as standard on new Transporter. Bulkhead wise, you can see this sculpt in shape here. So if you've got two single seats, the Transporter platform, or the T5 to T6.1 platform, historically always had an issue with the seats not being able to go far enough back, so it's quite an uncomfortable upright seated position, which we created a bulkhead extender for, which is in Mikey's van, which made all the difference. Now, I'm not going to say this has solved that problem perfectly, but this additional sculpting, certainly in there where there's a single seat, there's a double seat here, so you'd not benefit from this. It's certainly giving you a bit more room in the cab of the Transit Custom and the T7 over the Transporter. We are actually already working on a bulkhead extender to give you that additional room, which will be available for both these vehicles. But as they come out of the factory, there certainly feels like there's more room in the cab on the T7 and on the Transit Custom than there was on the T5 right the way through to the T6.1. So moving inside the cab area, I'm really happy that VW have gone with the same shape steering wheel on the T7 as they have on the T6.1. This is a base model, so it certainly needs replacing with something nicer, and a full leather steering wheel, or something just to make it prettier. This horrible plastic isn't as nice, but they've kept that VW shape. I cannot stand the steering wheel in the Transit Custom. I've done probably 1,500 miles in that, and it bothers me, that kind of square cut-off shape. I think Ford have got a gimmick where it can fold flat and become a table, and that's possibly why they've done it, but it just feels horrible. Steering wheel's around for a reason, and I much prefer the steering wheel shape and size in this. Obviously, the multifunction steering wheel, again, a base model, comes with all the multifunction extras that you wouldn't have got on an earlier Transporter model. Interior wise and dash wise, it does feel quite different to the Transit Custom inside. The seats, we've trimmed the seats there in the Transit Custom, so we can't give you a true reflection, but this has a nicer, more plush feel, feels like a better quality pattern, better quality fabric in the Volkswagen than the Ford. The dash is trimmed differently. The plastics and the surrounds just seem to have a more of a thought about kind of prettier look and feel to the Ford, but then that's maybe just because I've always liked VW styling more than I've liked Ford. If you're a Ford fan, you probably like the Ford more. Another nice little feature I really like about the T7, the single seat comes as standard with both armrests, armrest on both sides. Didn't on the Transporters, on a lot of vans, and it doesn't on the Transit Custom. So on the Transit Custom, you do get an armrest on this side only, but you don't on the Transporter. Now, we were quite surprised when it came with two, because when we were talking to the VW guys in Hanover about it, they said they designed this door card to sit higher than the Ford, so it was more able for you to put your arm when you're driving, like a lot of us do. But actually, it does have armrests on both sides as well that fold up nice and neatly out of the way. Transit Custom just on one side, T7 both sides. Moving up here into the infotainment system, one of the things that bothered me about the Ford infotainment system is that this screen was dead straight. So if you were sitting here as a user, as a driver, you kind of felt like you had to lean round to look at it a little bit. It wasn't so angled towards you, whereas the Volkswagen one, the infotainment system is the same size, but it's angled more towards the driver, so you feel like your natural position to look at it is more comfortable than it is in the Ford. So onto the infotainment system, the Volkswagen using their own software, it seems to me to be more intuitive, a lot more user-friendly than the Ford version. The way you scroll through, the way you set up all your settings, your connectivity with your CarPlay and everything, it just, to me, I prefer the style of it. It feels like a Volkswagen. It seems much more in line with the other Volkswagen vehicles, whereas the Ford does feel more Ford-like. Totally different software running that across the two. There is similarities, but it's very VW in its feel. Full Digi-Dash available, or a full Digi-Dash is completely standard on the base models, whereas on your T6.1, it was quite an expensive upgrade to have a digital dash, whereas that comes as standard now, even on the very, very entry level of the T7. Another really minor thing that I prefer about this over the Transit Custom, so your cup holder, and everybody loves a cup holder, right? Your cup holder in the Transporter is back here. Very similar in the placement to the T6 and T6.1. It's set further back behind the clocks here. Whereas in the Transit, the cup holder is here. Now, I've found that I've knocked that a few times as I've got out or been using the indicator stalk or something. It just feels like it's in the wrong place on the Transit, whereas on the Volkswagen, it seems to be set back in just a more usable space. Another thing that I like from the T7, and I'm sure the Ford does it as well, but we don't have an automatic, is T6s used to have a foot, it's such a little thing this, but the T6s used to have a footrest down here for an automatic, and with the T6.1, when they changed it all slightly down here, you lost your footrest and you had nowhere to put your foot when you were driving an automatic. But that footrest has been brought back in the DSG version to rest your left foot on when you're driving using your right foot. It's a small thing, but it's something that you notice straight away. Your foot, any T6.1 owners that came from a T6 instantly would notice there was kind of nowhere to put their left foot when they were driving. So a few of Other things to notice, so same as with the Ford, the electronic handbrake has been moved up here. Certainly going to be handy when it comes to a camper conversion point of view. So your handbrake down here was one of the restrictive points you would have when you were swiveling your seats from a camper. We already have the Rusty Lee single swivel seats for these, and you can swivel the single with the double in position without any concerns, without it knocking anything. Double swivel seat will come from Rusty Lee, but for now there's only the single available. But you can swivel it in situ without the need for a handbrake or a handbrake relocation, because the electronic handbrake's been moved up here. You'll see there's a lot more space here. There's more leg room and stuff for the passenger in the second seat. That's partly down to the fact that the automatic shifter on this one, being an auto, has been moved up here. So it's your stalk here that you use to control drive position, your reverse position, and everything. It's all done via the stalk here, similar to how it was in the ID Buzz. Going back to the seats and the trimming, so this is a 2+1, which will be common in most commercial vehicle setups. People are ordering them as a camper conversion, or more of a luxury use or a combi. They're more likely to go for 2 single seats. Certainly will make it easier for swiveling if you've got a camper. You'll see these recesses I talked about in the bulkhead are here. On the driver's side it works because the seat sits in there. On the passenger side, if you've got the double seat, it doesn't have any effect just because of the double seat. Nice little feature that I like here. This was a really rare feature you would see in the T6.1. The fold out armrest center section. This comes as standard on the T7. It doesn't come as standard on the Transit Custom. It is an optional extra, and it is in the higher spec vehicles. Yeah, standard on the T7, optional extra on the Transit Custom, very, very rare optional extra on a T6.1. So one other thing I've noticed from this vehicle over a basic model T6.1 is it has automatic main beam assist. So as you're driving along with your main beam on, car comes the other way, it automatically dips your main beam for you and then puts it back on afterwards. Nice feature. Like I said, these are full LED lights as standard, and there is a higher level LED on the higher spec vehicles that are a bit sexier, got a few extra nicer features in them, but even the base model comes with full LED with an automatic dip beam on it, which is something you wouldn't have got with the T6.1. As we know, the headlights in those, the standard halogen lights, are very poor. The auto dip beam was quite an expensive extra tip box that you very, very rarely see on the T6.1. Another thing while sitting in the cab here, so I spoke about the cup holder that's up here, but there's a secondary cup holder down here that folds up and out of the way. Nice little feature. You don't necessarily always want to have that cup holder, but it's there and neatly up and out of the way if you're not using it. So as well as having the automatic dip beam, it also has automatic headlights as standard. So again, that was an additional extra. You see a lot of people buy aftermarket automatic headlights, switches for the earlier team transporters, and they cause havoc for us when people have fitted them along with additional headlights. Automatic headlight on these come as standard even on the very base model. So before we go for a drive, something else I just want to come back to that wet belt issue and people talking about the oil. And as I said, a lot of people that talk about this wet belt issue, the guys that have worked on these vehicles have said it's historically because the wrong oil's been used, or low quality oil, or not serviced properly, or this original eco-friendly belt that was put in them. VW, when we spoke to VW about this, they seemed really confident. Like, I don't think for 1 second the clever guys at VW would have sat down and gone, having done their research, chose to put an engine that was going to cause them problems. They know that people are talking about that from a negative point of view. Well, they've combated that by putting the 5-year warranty, 5 services, the roadside assistance on there, which hopefully gives people more confidence, because if they're prepared to do that, they're obviously confident in it. The other thing that they've introduced to try and counter this issue with vehicles not being serviced properly is in the menu, and when you're driving the vehicle, when you start it up, it will give you information you need on the screen. So it will tell you things like, it's telling me now the oil quality. So this is because if your service schedule is 10,000 or 20,000 miles, the quality of the oil changes depending on your usage. So if your vehicle is sat on the drive for 6 months at a time because it's a camper and it doesn't get used all winter, or if your vehicle is ragged up and down the motorway at 100 miles an hour, or is towing a race car or a caravan, or is fully loaded with tools, the use of the engine and the quality of the oil is going to change dramatically. So the vehicle tells you in the centre of the screen there the quality of the oil. So this is a brand new vehicle, it's only got 140 miles on it, but it says the quality of the oil is 100%. So that's going to give you a guide. If you're looking at that and realising your quality of oil is low, even though your service seems like it's far away, you know it needs to be booked in to get a service done. This again is just another tool, would give me personally peace of mind that mechanical issues that could rear their head here, or any of this wet belt issue, which I am personally not worried about at all, gives me the peace of mind that I know I can tackle that before it happens by making sure the quality of my oil is there. Right, so let's take this thing for a drive. So as I said, I've probably done 1,500 miles in the Transit Custom. I've said previously on a video, when I drove the Transit Custom, I genuinely believed that Transit Custom drove better than any T6.1 I've owned, and I've owned quite a few T6.1s. transmissions, I've had manuals, I've had automatics. My feeling straight away when I drove that was it drove better, when I say that, the Transit Custom, than the Transporter, the previous model Transporter. It just felt like it had evolved, it felt more modern, it felt newer, it felt tighter, it felt more responsive. It just felt like an evolution or a better vehicle than the original Transit platform, T6.1, T6, T5. So the automatic handbrake gets a little bit of getting used to. The automatic gear shift in the corner here, again, gets a little bit of getting used to, but once you're used to it, it's a nice feature and I like the placement of it. So drive-wise, feels more responsive, it feels quicker to pull off than the 150 brake T6.1. It feels quick, actually. Like I said, this is 150, they do a 110 version. Suspension-wise, again, I've said this previously, I cannot stand a non-lowered or non-suspension improved previous shape Transporter. They make me feel sick. This certainly feels, again, a little bit more wallowy as it would. This is the worst road in the world to test suspension on. It's great for us being suspension specialists having this road as we drive out the unit because it is awful. It's so bouncy. This feels softer and more comfortable than a T6.1 does stock, and again more than the Transit Custom. I believe that these are IBAC springs on here. I may be wrong, but that was the information we got in the early days, and I don't think IBAC have got involved in the Transit Custom suspension. So two things that all modern cars have now that drive me wild. They are obviously safety features, but they are a lane assist and they're a speed warning. Now, I'm not saying I go speeding everywhere, but if you speed in the modern vehicles, they beep at you when you go over the speed limit. And I get that. If you're on 30 and you're doing 31, they beep at you constantly and you have to manually go in and turn it off every time. And when you cycle the ignition, European law, we're not in Europe by the way, so they should take that away, states that they have to reset that and it has to come back on again. So European law states that they have to do this. So I've got other cars that do it. My wife has a high-end i5 5N that does it every time, and you have to physically go in and turn it off. Now, like I said, I'm not purposely going and speeding everywhere I go, but if you're doing a 31 and a 30, it's going to beep at you constantly until you drop below 30, and then you accidentally creep over, it beeps at you again, and it gets very annoying. Now, I appreciate they can't take that away because of European law, or they could take it away, but whether they will, but it gets very frustrating. Now, on the Transit Custom, it's a lot louder. It's a really annoying high-pitched noise that beeps at you and it irritates you, but on the Transit Custom like this, you can just press and hold a button on the steering wheel, or double press a button on the steering wheel, and it turns it off, and you get an image on the dash that you know that you turned it off, and you're not going to get that warning, the reason why, but it's just so much easier to do it when you set off and you're going to be driving down a country lane that's 30 and you're going to be doing 31. You can just simply turn it off, as opposed to having to go in lots of menus and screens on the infotainment system and selecting it. The second thing is lane assist. I don't know about you, but I absolutely hate lane assist. Now, I live in the countryside, we work in the countryside and we live in the countryside, and I find certain vehicles are terrible for wanting to pull you into the side of the road. Audis are awful for it. Some of the vehicles, I just find them really frustrating in the way they're trying to pull you into the centre of the road, because I think they're built for roads that are a lot clearer marked. They're wider than we have here, and they aren't aware that this is our double carriageway. This is our two roads, not one single road, so it's constantly trying to pull you and it feels unsafe. It doesn't seem as noticeable on the Volkswagen, but it's very easy to turn it off again. You press and hold a button on the steering wheel, you get a little light appear on the dash and it tells you you've turned off that lane assist, and again, you've not got to go into the infotainment system and turn it off every time. It's just simply a press button on the steering wheel. As I said, the Transit Custom has those features as well. They're beeping, and the noise that the Transit Custom makes is a lot more annoying and louder than the Ford is. If you want to leave that system on, but you know you might accidentally go over the speed limit, it's bearable on the Transit because it's more just kind of a subtle background noise as opposed to a really loud beepy scream at you like the Ford is. All in all, drive-wise, I've not put lots of miles. It's only got 142 miles on it. Mikey's driven it more than I have, so you can hear it beeping at me now quietly. So Mikey's put the few miles on this. I've probably done 10 miles on it, but from what I've experienced, yes, as I said previously, it drives better than a stock T6.1 drives. I feel like it drives nicer than the Transit Custom drives. I'm not just saying that because we're Volkswagen people, because we are foolish not to develop for this and the Transit Custom because they're so similar. There'll be such a crossover in products that we will have a big Transit Custom range as well as a Transporter range. People love to put in the comments Transit HQ and all that. Just go ahead and take the nickel you want. It would be foolish business decision not to develop for both. And having the Transit Custom has given us the ability to develop for this platform way quicker than we ever would do before. We've been very privileged that we've had 20 odd years with the same platform very much to develop on. When this comes along, the Transit Custom has given us a leg up. We already have lowering spring for these, we already have windows, we have sidebars, we have various different splitters and spoilers and bits like that, and we very soon will have Bilstein coilovers. Before Bilstein have a catalogue product, there will be a solo Bilstein product, an NSL, so a lower version, Air suspension, very nearly ready to go. In fact, our prototype air suspension is going on this vehicle tomorrow. Wheels, again, we were able to get the right offset and width wheel for this based on already having access to the Transit Custom. So it's been very good for us. The biggest objection for a lot of people is diehard VW fans that it's built by Ford. It's built by VW in a Ford factory. VW quality control, VW line of production, but yes, it's very much in lots of ways a Ford. For me, not just as a Volkswagen fan, but based on looks, I prefer the look of this one. I get why people don't. Looks, price, we appreciate this one, we already decided this one's cheaper. Infotainment system used, drivability, ride, handling, control, finish, styling, internally and externally, warranty, recovery, service plan, MOT. Based on all that information, I think the smart money is to be on the one with the VW badge and not the one on the Ford badge. That's my opinion, and I think in time, as people get used to it, other people will start to feel in one when they get to drive and when they get to do a bit more research, they'll start to feel the same way as I do. I like it a lot. Yes, it's not necessarily everybody's cup of tea right now. It's not the prettiest looking thing, but that's what we're here for. That's what Transporter HQ do. We take a vehicle that looks like a basic commercial vehicle because that's what it's designed to do, and make it into a vehicle that people want to drive daily. They want to turn into camper vans, they want to lower, they want to lift, they want to change the styling, they want to make them their pride and joys and their hobby vehicles as well as their vehicles they use to drive to and from work every day and take the children to school. So we're back at HQ, so I just want to overview some of those things and just give you my opinion on this. So people are going to think that I'm going to say this is amazing because my business is based on this. As I said previously, we're developing for both of these, so whether you buy that one or that one's not going to exist, so you can't buy a T6.1. You can hold on to that one and we'll still be able to supply you with lots of cool parts for it, but we will continue to develop for both of these platforms. Yes, we'll predominantly develop for the Transporter T7 because that's where our bread and butter is, that's where our heart is, but it would be foolish not to develop for both platforms or both vehicles at the same time. As an overview, let's look at it from a financial point of view or what I would spend my money on. So if I was going to buy a new vehicle now and I had the option to still buy a T6.1 or a Transit Custom or a T7, what would I buy? Well, I would 100% buy a T7. And my reasons are, firstly, as we've discovered cost, this is a better value vehicle than that, and it's certainly a better value vehicle than that. On top of that, you've got your 5-year warranty, you've got your 5 free services, you've got your 5-year roadside assistance with the AA, you've got your 3-year MOT. All of that on top of it, I prefer the way this one drives, I prefer the way it feels inside, I prefer the way it's finished, I prefer the little details like the wheel liners and stuff that aren't on there. It feels more modern, it feels more up to date than the T6.1. It drives and handles better than both of these would do from stock. And yes, it's not everybody's cup of tea. I guarantee you people will grow to like the look of it. The same happened when the T6.1 came out. These look very basic. We've been able to do things with styling with these, like the GTD bumper and stuff, to make them even better, and that's what we'll do with this. Our goal is to make these vehicles not only commercial vans that people drive and deliver parcels in or do building work in or fit windows in, they're also vehicles that people are going to use as their daily drivers, that they're going to take their children to school in, that they're going to turn into camper vans and go on holiday, that they're going to load mountain bikes in the back and use them as recreational vehicles. We're very unique in this country that we do that far more than anywhere else. You drive throughout the world, yes, you'll see transporters, but they're predominantly just commercial vehicles used for commercial use. We want them to look and drive and handle and feel like a car, and that's where Transport HQ come in. Watch this space, so much more coming. We're going to continue to work on this. Love it or hate it, they're here to stay. We will continue to develop and do parts for these, but a lot of our focus now is on the new T7 Transporter. As I said, in the next day, hopefully tomorrow, this thing will be on air suspension and some nice wheels. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Feel free to slag it off in the comments. Feel free to say wet belt, built by Ford, all the things we've seen 100 times over. Don't worry, you won't offend us because I've seen them all in all the videos and all everybody else's videos. Have at it, slag it off all you want. We're developing it, we like it, genuinely, hand on heart, really like this vehicle. If you've liked this video, please do hit that like button. Share this video with anybody that's thinking of buying a T6.1 or a Transit Custom or a new T7 Transporter. Please do subscribe to the channel. Loads more content coming across these vehicles, also across other vehicles, Porsches. Mitch has just bought a new BMW yesterday, which we'll be featuring. Build off series with Mikey. Mikey's got something pretty special. Well, that's some of the Skyline engine on its way, which is going to be part of a build off. So much more to come. Please do subscribe to that channel. Ring that little bell to get notifications when new videos come out. And as always, thanks for watching.